Hello. Good morning. Good morning. We are really, really happy to see you here. I'm Gabi Manuli. I'm IPI Director of Special Projects. You will see me and my team running around. So whatever you need, we are here. I just want to briefly introduce this session this morning. We are in the session Reclaiming the Value of Journalism. So if this is not your session, this is the time. So we put a lot of thought about this session. What does it mean, journalism now? What is a human journalist versus a non-human journalist? So we have a great lineup of speakers. It's moderated by Margo Smit, my dear friend, a news ombudsman from the Netherlands. Also a little bit of housekeeping. This session is running for an hour, and then right away we have another session, which is after the ceasefire ending impunity in Gaza. So if you also want to stay for that session, you can stay in the room and we will continue. And after that session, the long-awaited lunch break is coming. So without further ado,
thank you.
Your session.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Gabi, can we give you an applause for the organizers of this and all your people? We wouldn't be able to do it without all of them. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk about the value of journalism, but moreover, the reclaiming the value of journalism, which is a broad topic, and also it makes you think, reclaiming what and from whom? Because last night, I remember Khadija Patel said something really interesting. Let's not go harking back for some past that never was. Because was it so much better in the past? What did we own then in journalism that we don't own anymore? We'll touch on that because there are a few remarks to make on that. We have plenty of questions. We will talk for a while and then we'll open up for questions the last 15 minutes. And I have somebody there who will keep me straight on the time. Gabi said, I'm news ombudsman in the Netherlands, but I have a wonderful panel here that I'll briefly introduce because you can read all about them in the program. And I'm not going to mention everything all of you have done because it's too much. We would still be here tomorrow. But first of all, we have here Beata Balogova. Do I say that right? Yes. Former editor-in-chief, current chief commentator of SME. But what I found interesting about you, you're a novelist. What is your novel about?
It's about an ethnic Hungarian family who survives the waves of history and is still going strong. And it's about women, about the family where most of males die.
Is there anything autobiographical in there?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Well, she's much better than us.
So you are currently on the board of the European Press Prize, and you were a deputy chairwoman of the executive board of IPI for a long time. Then we have next to me André Petry, since 2020 editor-in-chief at Piauí. Do I say it okay?
That's correct.
Right. What is it? What is your magazine?
It's a monthly magazine. It's known as the Brazilian New Yorker because we work with long-form journalism. We are very happy with that, but New Yorker is not as happy as we are.
They should be called the English Piauí.
Yes. Well, Piauí is just a name. It's actually a name of a state in Brazil, like Arizona or New Mexico or whatever, but the name is not after the state. It's just a name.
And you also do a podcast, a political podcast.
We do a political podcast, fortunately one of the leading political podcasts in Brazil, yes.
That must be a handful at the moment in Brazil, being a political podcast.
Yeah, definitely,
yes.
yeah.
We'll talk more about your platform.
Okay, thank you.
Then we have Roger de Weck. You're an author in Zurich, but you were Director General of Swiss Radio and Television. Under fire these days, isn't it?
Yes, we had a votation on the existence of the public service.
Yeah.
And we won. 72% of the Swiss citizens decided to maintain the public service. But we will have the next votation in March.
Okay.
And they try just to cut the budget by 50%.
What will be left of it if that happens?
It won't happen.
It won't happen. You have trust and faith in the Swiss citizenship.
They
yes.
know what what the good public service does to a very heterogeneous country. They put the society together, and in a direct democracy, it's even more important.
Well, then you know, as anyone here, the value of journalism in the public interest.
Yes.
What it is, yes. We will ask you for it. But you recently also wrote a book that is called Das Prinzip trotzdem. But I was struck by the subtitle. Warum wir den Journalismus von den Medien retten müssen. Or why we have to save journalism from the media. We will come to that. But can you say in one word, one sentence, what do you mean by that? Saving journalism from the media.
I need 2-3 sentences.
Yes, sure. You can get that.
You know, journalism is first and foremost rather sober. And the media business, the media industry is emotional. And journalism keeps its distance to those in power, but also to the public. And the media industry vies for the audience's favor. And journalism is uncomfortable, and the media industry is streamlined. And journalism is interested in offer, and the media industry is interested in demand. Yeah. And journalism is interested in facts, and the media industry in opinions. So our main duty is to resist, not to bow to the mechanism of the media industry.
So we're all in the resistance here. Well, if you were here at the previous panel, you know we are. We are in the resistance. Yeah. Thank you. We'll come back to that. And then we have Stephen Engelberg, since a long time, 2013, editor-in-chief of ProPublica, the medium that has public interest, journalism in the public interest, in its mission statement. Independent, non-profit newsroom that produces investigative journalism in the public interest. You've won many prizes, Pulitzer Prizes and everything, but I just want to take you on that one, the investigative journalism in the public interest. What, in your opinion, is journalism in the public interest?
I think it's journalism that in some way, shape, or form sort of takes the sort of public conversation about events and brings it to another level, right? I mean, and we'll talk about this on the panel. You know, how do we sort of reclaim the value of journalism? The value of journalism is giving you the sort of undeniable facts and information on which you can form opinions and decisions. I mean, there is no democracy, I think, without solid journalism that allows you to, you know, cut through the media, as Roger describes it here, to get to things that say, okay, I have to cast my vote. What am I going to do here? What do I actually know? And hopefully journalism in the public interest deepens and furthers that.
It's more than just providing information.
Absolutely.
Much more, right?
No, I mean, well, because providing information, as our Secretary of War says, is saying what it is the government wants you to say. And I think journalism in the public interest is finding out what's behind all of that, which is why you saw so many American news organizations walk straight out of the Pentagon rather than sign a pledge that they would continue to serve only what the government wanted in the world of information.
Do you get the impression that the resistance in the U.S. is growing amongst journalists?
I bridle at the word resistance. You know, I was chatting with Marty Barron before, and he does have the all-time great line on this: "We're not going to war, we're going to work." I stick by that. He said it's going to be on his tombstone. I don't know. He's got so many great things, but he's right. And so we don't. We at ProPublica would not say we're in the resistance. I guess we're in the resistance to non-factual discourse. If we're going to resist something, let's resist that. I'm not resisting a regime or an administration or a party. That's not how we see it.
Wasn't it Kovacs and Rosenstiel that once said the only obligation we have is to the truth?
I think they were right.
Still right.
And,
yes.
and I would say it's, I guess maybe perhaps not a coincidence that as a very, very young 20-year-old journalist, Bill Kovacs was actually my mentor and a great journalist and a guide for my entire career. So I will certainly endorse that.
Good. Beata, how does that this idea of journalism in the public interest, how does that translate to your platform, your medium, and the situation that you see in your part of Europe, Central Eastern Europe?
we no longer think about public journalism as journalism done by public media as such. And actually, I wanted to start with a short story that stayed in my head. A year ago, I came to Austria to attend a panel, and I was talking about how the public service media was overtaken by our government because they followed the Orban handbook. I was talking about paid hate campaigns, and I was talking about, misinformation media being elevated to the level of actually serious media. And my Austrian colleagues were listening to me, but through a type of glass wall empathy. It means that you try to understand, but you still feel that it's not that something that might happen to us, and it is something distant, though Bratislava is 50 kilometers away. And I came back this year, and what changed is that in Austria there was already, the scare of right-wing political overtake, and suddenly we were talking at a completely different level. Mm-hmm. We were talking about, and they asked me, so can you give us advice, like how you prepare for it? And I also, when I thought about these responses you are giving, my first response was that for the first year, you will be resilient, you will follow your good standard journalism, and it's always the question of time. And yesterday there was a comment made that in the US, journalists will fight their way through good quality journalism. Hungarian journalists are doing good quality journalism for over a decade. And their situation is not so bad because they are not able to do good quality journalism, but it is because after a certain point, even when you explain the public, the essence of journalism, even when you try to keep all the golden standards, it's not up to your own community and your own strengths, because it's beyond, it's the whole setup of governments. And it's very important to realize, because it very much, it will be very different in 5 years if nothing changes in the US, or if nothing changes in Slovakia. We will be talking about a very different situation, and maybe things we are talking about reclaiming the value of journalism will be also different. Because under such dire circumstances, yes, you adjust some of those rules. Mm-mm. For example, even when you do public journalism or journalism in public service, you very often you are reactive. You very often react to what the government says because your instinct is, let's debunk the lies. Right. That's your role. But then you are a reactive media, and you are losing your gatekeeper role, because you cannot self-confidently say that I think today this is the most important issue. And now imagine when the biggest disinformator is your government or your president. Yes. Or
I think I can imagine.
I know. That's why I looked at you. And so suddenly you have to rethink the whole concept of explaining what you do, debunking the misinformation. You have to dig into that dirt and pick the dirtiest piece of misinformation and explain. And that's something that if you are doing that for 5 years, for 10 years, I think your idea of what the essence of journalism is changing.
Right. Andre, when you look at, Beata said when we first talked on Zoom, she said she's still optimistic. We'll talk about that. We'll come back to her optimism. But from your point of view, in Brazil, things have changed dramatically over the last few years. How about your optimism, and how is your journalism in the public interest tied to that?
Well, first of all, I can say I'm optimistic because we were in such a bad situation a couple of years ago, and we are in a better situation now. So that's something to be optimistic
You can give
about.
us some recipes later on how
Well-
to do that, because we have some...
Okay. Well, as you all know, we were under a far-right administration until 2 years ago, and of course the press were having a hard time to work under those circumstances. Journalists and media outlets being frontally attacked, specifically female journalists, because of this far-right administration. It's weird, not weird, it's explainable what it happens that way. But now, well, we are in a better situation in terms of the political environment.
Did journalism play a role in changing that environment?
I believe so. I believe so.
There's the optimism,
I
yes.
would not be able to tell you how much and what level, but I do think so, because of the main reasons I think this far-right administration couldn't stay in power was because their awful administration of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
And the COVID pandemic was a central subject of our media outlets. They did wonderful work on that. So Brazilian population, Brazilian audience was very aware of what was going on during the pandemic, even though the government was trying to hide everything. I'm going to tell you a quick story that I think it's important. At one time during the COVID pandemic, well, the primetime news shows were, of course, broadcasting the numbers, and the rising numbers of infected people, and the government was very concerned about that. And then what they did, they just said, well, now, and this official number was released by the government. And they said, well, we are not going to release the number about the infected people anymore. Now we are going to release the number about the cured people. And we are not going to release it at 6 or 7 o'clock in the night because the number goes to the primetime news shows. We are going to release it 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock so the media cannot broadcast that. What the major media outlets in Brazil did, they got together, they formed a pool, they went to each health department in each state every day, packed the national number, and put it on the national news show, TV, on prime time. So the government tried to kind of censor that. They were bypassed, and I think that was a wonderful work that the media, that's the value of journalism.
There you have it.
And maybe one of the results of that was this far-right administration is fortunately gone,
Right.
up until now.
Roger, if you hear this story, this means that media outlets do have a role in saving the good journalism. So how do you look at that? How does that relate to your book? Because you make a distinction between the media and journalism.
I was oriented more in the Western and European and American media industry. The situation in Brazil is totally different, I think. But the condition to have solution are the facts. And
Like the numbers of...
the numbers of... and without facts, you don't have solutions. Facts is the condition to have truth. Without facts, you don't have truth. Without truth, you don't have democracy. So you made a great job, and you made it in a cooperative way. I can just say I admire this reaction to a half dictatorship.
Yeah. What can we learn
it's
from?
nice because this pool, just to make this quick observation, was made, of course, regardless of rivalry, competition, ratings, or whatever. You know, it's a full public service journalism.
Right. Can we learn something, Roger, from what André is telling us here in the Western, like what you studied was, you said the Western, European and American situation. Is there something we can learn from that?
we can learn a lot, because in a lot of countries, and that's the huge difference to what we know in Europe, there are people just at risk because they are journalists. And this is beginning in the United States. I'm I don't know what the situation will be in 2-3 years, if you will have a dictatorship too or not, or something on the way to dictatorship or not. It begins. But in Europe, we can work with some exceptions. In Slovakia, you had a journalist murdered. But with some very rare exceptions, we can make journalism without any life risk. And we forget that. We forget that. And what is good journalism? And I don't have to explain it to this audience, but it's research facts, verify facts, analyze facts, present facts, weight facts. A facultative function is have a commentary on the facts, and then actualize the facts and have a corrigendum if we made mistake.
Yes.
In the social media, we have only one function: commentary, commentary, commentary. And I'm not interested anymore in opinion journalism, because you have opinions everywhere. And you have superficial opinion everywhere. I think the core value of journalism is investigate, investigate, investigate. In a post-factual society, just to strengthen the power of facts. And we have to return to the roots, and you did it in Brazil.
Yeah. It almost sounds like a cookbook for what ProPublica is doing, right?
Yes, very, very, very much so. And I completely agree, Roger, with what you're saying. I mean, we had an interesting experience recently, a lot of conversation in the United States about immigration. And a Supreme Court justice had written an opinion saying it's not a problem for the immigration authorities to arrest people based on the color of their skin, because, of course, they'll be released very quickly. So we went out and gathered information on American citizens who were arrested by the immigration authorities and who were not released quickly. We were held for days, even weeks. Counted them up, 170 American citizens held for a length of time. And this story broke through, and I think it broke through because it's a verifiable fact, just as what Andre was talking about. The number of people who fell ill to COVID in Brazil last night is a verifiable fact. And, you know, coming back to the resistance question, our job is not to resist, it's to put in the public record the verifiable facts that allow you as the public to make decisions. You can choose to resist once you know accurate facts. And this phrase came to mind during this week, and I stand by it, you know, fight fire with facts. You know, in English we say fight fire with fire, which is opinion journalism. Fight fire with facts. I think that's what we are about. And frankly, verifiable numbers where you put your evidence on the internet and you show your work and you say this is true. It does something to come back against, let's say, the President of the United States saying, we sunk this boat, we saved 25,000 lives, which of course is an invented number. But this is not an invented number. We show you the pictures of the 170 people who were held for days and weeks in prisons despite being American citizens. That's a verifiable fact. I think that's incredibly important to the conversation.
Stefan, you will be quoted in the next edition of my book.
Okay.
Right. In the addendum of this one.
I would be proud to.
Right. You wrote to me when we were preparing this session, Stephen, that we have to be meticulous in showing how we've reached our investigative findings. But also, we should clearly respond when politicians lie about us. So should we call them liars? Because that is something that immediately is drawn into
that, to me, makes us part of the media.
Yeah.
I don't want to be part of the media. I agree with Roger.
Right.
When they lie about us, which they do in almost every response to a story, we have taken the approach of coming back with factual things, you know, and say, we do our homework. You want to see it? Here it is. Very, very direct, clear. We don't let them lie about our work, but we don't call them liars. I think there's a distinction there.
Right. Beata, go ahead. Yeah, you want to...
Yes, I would like to respond to several things because I think this, what just my esteemed colleague said, illustrates why is it so difficult on long term under an autocratic rule to maintain the standards. You need facts. And let's say the other key rule of journalism is to be balanced and have different sides of opinions of different sides or stands. But now imagine when the government is not talking to you, or the government is talking to you through social media. And when you quote them, you need to quote social media. Mm-hmm. And basically, you tell people that, that quote is something that you consider relevant for your story. And this is happening already. I mean, in Hungary, it's for years that Orbán is not talking to journalists. And in Slovakia, when our prime minister talks to journalists, he always adds a comment and he calls us anti-Slovak prostitutes or Soros flock of swines. And it really shows that it's almost unavoidable that more opinion basically slips into your reporting, and you can detect that. And I try to resist it, but if you allow me to disagree that opinion pieces are no longer important, because especially in an environment when the public discourse is so kidnapped by hate and aggression, when you have an opinion piece which is based on facts, that you actually explain the facts, it's quite important because you set the tone of arguing and arguments, and that's a different type of journalism, which actually has a very deep tradition in Central and Eastern Europe. And again, I think it's different. I have a degree from Columbia University, so I know what really true fact-based and purified journalism is. But going back to one more thought, that it's not enough that we tell ourselves that what is the value of journalism, what we value, but how you persuade actually your readership. Mm-hmm. And in Slovakia, around 70% of people get their news from Facebook. And I realized that whenever we run a story, when we explain how we did it, the readership is much lower. And I think it's very important to find a balance. And I saw that when we get the questions, what we should answer on this panel, there was a question whether we should not turn around the issue and basically ask our audience what they want. And I think that's the biggest challenge now, how you balance between what you think the most important issue is, what you think the essence of the journalism is, and what your audience think. And this is where, in most of our media, the table guy steps in and tells you that, oh, we have numbers, highway, people want to read about highways. And you can write story about highways for one day or for a week, but then the table guy comes again and tells you that, I think that we have the numbers that people wants to read about trains, and then you think, okay, how did something happen? There was no train accident. We interviewed all the remaining train conductors in Slovakia. So and I think that this is something where we have to set our limits. Despite the fact that technology is getting always more and more advanced, we actually can track in a story how far the reader gets. We can track what words are strong enough that, and I mean, I am absolutely open to technology, but I want to remain old-fashioned in making decisions on on, how far we go in it.
So if we want to draw in because without our public, we're nowhere. We need, our journalism can fall flat because nobody's reading us or looking at us. But there is a limit to it. We're not going to cater to just everything they ask from us, right?
In my perception, the death of journalism is the current structural shift from attention economy to excitement economy.
Right.
Well put. We have to create attention.
Right.
But
how, Roger?
Many content managers believe that excitement is attention. Excitement is the opposite of attention.
Right.
When I'm excited, I don't read concentrated piece, even an opinion piece.
Right. How can we go to that attention? I think the main danger is to imitate the social media. And I observe that more and more journalistic media are imitating the social media, the mechanism, even when they speak about conversions and over the vocabulary of the social media. And but we can learn something from them, right?
They're trending topics, as you said. And the copy is always paler than the original. We have not to maximize the clicks in short term, but to retain the users on long term. This is our duty. And
but if I may say, I think two things. I think, we were once going to hire somebody to help us work on audience, and so what's your job? And this person worked at a leading American newspaper, and I said, I Google what's trending, and then I tell the department, the news department, they should get a story on it. That is obviously not what we're talking about. But I think it is possible to learn some things from the techniques of storytelling of social media that stir sort of interest and sort of bring us readers to things that we would define as important. One of the things that's so annoying about this surveying the readers, what invention in the history of anything came from a survey, right? Think about Stephen Jobs and Apple, right? All the things that he invented, people didn't know they wanted a little device to carry their music around the way he made it until he made it. That was not audience survey. That was somebody saying, this is something I see beyond the horizon. This is something you need to know. This is something you're going to want to have. I think we can do that as journalism, but use some of the vocabulary of, let's say, TikTok to present information to an audience that's only getting its news from TikTok. I have 3 children, 33, 30, and 23. I would say the vast majority of their news consumption is on social media. So how do we reach
Beata
that audience?
says, Facebook.
If I may, there is actually a compromise solution, because I think it's very important, and what I learned from these table guys when they come, that
I like that phrase, by the way, the table guys.
I didn't know how you call them in English.
This is a good phrase.
It's good, it's good.
And so what I learned is that it's very important to show our readers that I know where it hurts.
Yes.
I know what your problems are, and I will tell you one concrete story. Once I sent my colleague to a hospital where we got the news that they have this Legionella bacteria in their pipes. And I sent there, just get a sample of the water and we will pay for the test. And the test came back positive. And we wrote about it. And there was a great scandal. They almost sued us that we are spreading,
truth.
Basically, that we are wanting to destroy. And the hospital director explained that, if we close down the hospital, many people will die. But the responses that came, and the reader's reception, it really showed that suddenly it was a topic that wasn't just an issue in a small hospital. And before, the table guys said that, people wants to like people are interested in the condition of bathrooms in the hospitals. And so that's how we get there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the response.
Can I try and Andre, because there's one issue that we haven't touched on yet. I'm sorry about that, but we will open up again for questions. Because one of the things that allows you to be able to do this kind of journalism is to be radically independent. Also, elephant in the room, financially. How do you do that? Because it is a real big part of the way you run your magazine and how you provide your public with journalism in the public interest.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. I think it's quite important for us because we have a model that is unprecedented in Brazil, and I'm not quite aware that there is an identical model in any other country, which is in 2021, the founder and publisher of our magazine stepped down, and he made an endowment fund and gave this endowment fund to a brand new, recently created institute to manage it. It's 220 Institute. It's named after the press freedom clause in Brazilian constitution. And its mission, central mission, is to finance independent journalism. And this endowment, the endowment's investment, the endowment's income is 100% channeled to Piauí magazine.
Wow.
Only the income. Nobody can touch the principle of the value, So that means that, well, another point that is very important is that this endowment fund is irrevocable. It cannot be withdrawn.
Right.
By no means, by no one, not even the donor. So in that way, this model is engineered in a way that gives us two important things, one of those you just mentioned. First one is longevity.
Yeah.
Because if the endowment is well managed, since the principle is never touched, it's meant to last forever or for decades or whatever, for a long time. And the second one is radical editorial independence, because it protects us from press markets, market press, from, difficult financial constraints, which reinforces our independence. So I think I forgot to say that the investments income that this institute gives us covers approximately 80% of our annual operation.
Right.
So it's a huge amount.
Yes.
And it's very comfortable to work under those circumstances.
The other 20 come from?
From the traditional
Subscription
revenue
or
model,
revenue.
Subscriptions, ads, and everything, which, as we all know, it doesn't work very well. That's the reason why it covers only 20%. But the point is, I know we didn't find any holy grail. It's not a perfect model, but basically because it's not replicable.
Right, right.
Of course.
But it can be inspirational.
It is inspirational, I think.
And I think it will ring with Roger, because you also write about how you can save journalism from the media. Is this?
Inspirational, I think, because the fundamental principle that engineered this structure is something that is worth spreading. The idea is journalism is a public good.
Yes, it's like water from the tap.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So if we spread the idea that journalism is a public good, maybe we can go a little bit farther.
Right. Roger?
Yes, we have some examples where private investments in journalism function. The best example in Europe is Le Monde. A success story. The owner expanded editorial department from 300 to 550 colleagues, and the number of digital subscriptions doubled from 300,000 to 600,000. But not all media outlets have the necessary capital for that. And that's why we need public investment in journalism. And media policy should be journalism policy. In Northern Europe, Sweden invests in media diversity, and even in the far north, every single small city has an independent regional media outlet. And in Denmark, they go one step further, and the public sector covers part of the editorial costs. And if management cut back on editorial staff, there are fewer subsidies.
Yeah.
Northern Europe is top in the ranking of media freedom, top in the ranking of media diversity, top in the ranking of media credibility, and top in the ranking of funding, public funding
Roger,
of
do
media.
you think the private and public investment can work together?
Yeah.
In one single media outlet,
Not
for example?
only in public service broadcasting,
Okay.
but also in private. And they have totally independent commissions who have to apply fixed rule. There is no political influence. It doesn't work in any country, but in some countries it can work. And it strengthens the media freedom. Because what is press freedom when you have less and less press? You need it.
Absolutely. Would it work in the US, Stephen?
Well, I must admit, and maybe I'm too cynical here, that I've always been an opponent of public funding of media. I said even before, many years before the Trump administration, to my colleagues in NPR, you should get away from having any money from them, because one day, someday, a politician will come a la Urban, a la Bolsonaro, and they will come for that money, and it will be a problem. So, I mean, from the American experience, but I think also from Brazil, Hungary, Slovakia, politicians cannot be trusted in the end, no matter how many commissions you have, to keep their hands off.
But if you see the situation now in the United States, the private media groups are bowing to the pressure of Donald Trump.
Yes.
And the small public service is quite resisting.
Maybe
Well,
it's becoming a real public journalism, because the public funds part of NPR and part of
Well, now
PBS.
at this point, with the recent changes, the entirety of NPR's salary structure will be funded by public contributions. The entirety of ProPublica's structure is funded by public contributions. We have 90,000 donors, and I think, unfortunately, in a country with politicians you can't really trust, I'm not sure any guardrails are enough to keep you safe. And Northern Europe certainly is a shining example of how it can work. I must admit, based on recent experience and not so recent experience, I'm not sure it can be trusted in my country.
We had Joseph Stiglitz last night on stage, and even though he spoke very little about it, he mentioned it at the beginning. There were 11 economists recently writing up like a pamphlet saying, this is a public good, like you say, journalism is a public good. And they made it sound real easy, you know, if we all feel it's a public good, we should all finance it. How come it doesn't happen?
Also, let's be important, because the term is so important here. In economics, a public good is a good the market doesn't produce enough of. So how do we, in the face of a market failure, a market produces media, not journalism, how do we as societies produce enough of this public good? That's the question.
If I may, one comment that you mentioned Slovakia and Hungary, but now the European Union has its very much celebrated European Media Freedom Act. This act, if they would be able to force the certain governments to respect that act, that would be possible to have effective public investments. But you know, in the country I am coming from, and my Hungarian colleague comes from, public media is the first who falls victim to any government change. In Slovakia, we had in 30 years 20 directors generals of public television. And I think that it goes back to what I keep saying, like a parrot, that unless the European Union which was watching Hungary over the past decade to decline, is really changing a strategy how to enforce its own values and the emphasis on these countries. Public investments won't be very helpful there. And Slovakia is going to be a test case. Because, okay, and even when I talk to diplomats, they say that Hungary is a lost case. And it's outrageous that they say it, but that's the truth. But Slovakia is not yet a lost case if they are able to actually enforce the rules. I will just quickly mention one example. The emphasis says that tapping the phones of journalists and using spyware against them is prohibited. Just 2 days ago, the boss of our spies, the intelligence service, announced that they are creating a new strategy how to monitor harmful content in the media. And they have learned it from Orban, and I assume that very shortly we will have this bureau for controlling, the state safety and sovereignty. And I am very curious how the EU is going to
react to this.
Because we journalists, and I completely agree that investigative journalism is the core, but we can't investigate the secret service because we don't have access. I mean, it's the murkiest part of the society. And if we cannot, how the European Union will?
And our public wants to read about this, definitely. I'm going to open it up to questions. I have a gentleman here in the front. We have 15 minutes for questions. I have a gentleman there, and there's supposedly a microphone. And I see you too. I see the three of you and a fourth. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Richard
Keep it
Gingras.
short, because there's plenty of questions.
Yes. I think the point about the distinction between journalism and media is a distinction without a difference in the eyes of the consumer anyways. But I think your more valid point is so many news outlets have fact-based journalism surrounded increasingly by ever more opinion, and we somehow expect the consumers and the readers not to see the taint, and they don't. So my question to you, in my country, our only hope is, can we build a fat middle?
And your country is?
United States.
United States, right.
And all countries, if you look at the Reuters report, the trust in news is well below 50%. So my question to you is, what's your strategy to reach across the divide and build the fat middle?
I'll give that question to you first.
To me, I would like Steve to answer that first.
He can react to you. Because first we want to hear from you, because apparently you have done something right. And then we can learn from... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, if I got your question right, we are trying to work in the most transparent way possible and trying to be no biased at all, even though that's not non-political, but non-biased. And I can tell you that in a way, we have been read by our, let's say, favorite audience, but also from the other side. Because we were fortunate to build some level of credibility. And so both sides kind of read us, one more than the other. But I think credibility, quality journalism, in-depth journalism is able to do that. As we work with long-form journalism, that favors it. Of course, long-form journalism, you are more, able to do all that stuff. So, but that's, I have to recognize, it's a very particular way that we are facing the situation, because I'm not talking about the daily newspapers or, that's a different thing. And I'm sure Steve is going to give us the right recipe right now.
No, because you're making a very nice bridge towards something all of you said, transparency. Is that?
Yes, I think that is the key, which is that there are many things wrong with the internet. It destroyed our models, so there's a lot wrong with it. But one thing that's right with it is that in all stories now, you have this capability of including these links, which allow you to say, here is the video, here is the audio, here are the calculations we did, here are the people we interviewed, look at them, see this. I think this is so crucial in this AI period when everything is suspected of being fake. And so, yes, I think we need to be very transparent about how we're saying what we're saying. And this, look, maybe I'm naive here, but I think we even need to be transparent if, God forbid, we get it wrong. We should not
Please
be like...
do so. As an ombuds, yes, do so.
I mean, you can see the temptation, which is, again, to fight fire with fire. But I think on those occasions where we make errors, we should be forthright about it and distinguish ourselves from the people who simply have propaganda. So I think transparency, to me, is the key in building a fact-based model. And look, I live in some ways in an ivory tower at ProPublica. We started it and we said we will have no opinion journalism. So, I mean, how lucky is that? So all I have to do is make sure the reporters don't put their opinions in the copy, and now we're good.
And keep telling our public what they're looking at,
Yes.
Facts or opinion. Keep telling them. It's in the Netherlands, it's in our ethical rules. Distinguish facts from opinion. And we tell again and again, and I know that John, who's there from AP, is a standards editor, in the Ombuds world, that's one of the things we keep telling our reporters. Make a clear distinction between what you're serving. This is not soup, this is not a dessert, this is fact, this is opinion. Mm-hmm. We have a gentleman over there. Do you have a microphone, sir?
My question is a brief comment on what you just said, that if we, of course, as journalists, we have to distinguish between fact and opinion. But if through social media and all, people are actually getting news faster and quicker, and if newspapers are just printing those facts without a context or a little bit of opinion, why would people read newspapers? One. Secondly, Steve, we all know that, like a powerful company like the Blockbuster Video got bankrupt because they ignored platforms like Netflix and others. If editors in the newsroom ignore trends, surveys, ratings, who is reading what, who is watching what, how would the legacy media would survive, newspapers and television?
Okay, can we put that question to Roger? To you or Beata, because you came up with the table, guys.
Start in the next hour.
It is a very broad question indeed, yes.
I would just take on just one part of the answer.
Sure.
I think it's a huge responsibility of all of us in the media industry to pay attention to small segments of the public. We live in the on-demand age where everyone accesses what interests them most. And the on-demand age is not primarily the age of blockbusters, but rather the accumulation of many small audiences into a large audience. And users of cultural and arts sections, for example, are not particularly numerous, but they are especially loyal, aficionados, would you say in Brazilian. It's criminal to neglect small audiences and to be just captivated by the blockbusters. And I think this is just a part of the answer.
But we have a coffee break afterwards, and you can get together.
If I may just one comment, that it's actually easier to very purely separate opinion from facts in niche publications or in publications when you know for whom you are writing. But for example, my publication, we talk to half of the nation. And so it's getting more and more difficult. And now if you can't include the trend that journalists want to be superstars, they want to be on public media or social media, and they say, I want to sell my own story so that it's read. Because journalism is for what? If you cannot write for a black hole, and if only 1,000 people read your story, so where is your investment? Mm-hmm. And I can take this argument, and I think the way to do it is to have a constant internal conversation with your colleagues, like where is the limit of you being, you know, like a social media superstar and influencer and sharing your opinions. Again, and also it goes very down to the language. Because you can separate opinion, but even in the strictest news reporting in countries where there is shouting, where the politicians are using stronger and stronger words, the journalists are also somehow inspired to use in their reporting more expressive words. And in that way, like you read a news story with some of those more expressive words, and isn't it like already mixing opinion? I mean, the big tradition of storytelling, it's very difficult, you know, to separate, to keep that line very sharp. And I think we live the time of blurred line, and it's our utmost challenge to navigate and walk that very blurred line, and that's where it comes to down. So I don't think it's any longer possible to very strictly draw that.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question there from the lady over there. Do you have a microphone? No. It's the lady here. Sorry about that. We have so little time for questions, but she was here first. And then I have a gentleman there, and then we have to stop because... So keep it short, please.
Yes,
Thank you.
very short question. Do you think, I would like to ask maybe yes or no answers as well. Do you think that public knows that news journalism is a public good in your countries? And also whether the quality of journalism in your countries deserve the attention of the public, the level of quality? How do you see it?
Wow, that's. Let's go for the second question, right? Does your journalism... Is it quality enough? Stephen.
Okay, quickly. I think American journalism, the sort of form we're talking about here, has never been better, despite all of the pressure. So I think it very much deserves the public attention. As to the first point, I don't think people see it as a public good. The news came falling from the newspapers. No one knew how they were funded. So I think people are very much behind in understanding that.
Okay, Beata, do you?
I am part of the European Press Prize, and I can tell that I was a jury for almost 6 years, and I can tell that we are getting the best of European journalism, and it is good enough. But the other question, if the public knows, very often the public, we talk about muckraking journalism, and we talk about investigative journalism, and we talk about our watchdog role, but I am not sure the public always understands what it actually means, that we control power on behalf of them.
So we have a long way to go. We have one final question here. Sorry to all of you who still have questions. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Pablo Eichel from France. I'm the Vice President of the European Federation of Journalists. And I would like to ask you, how do you think the journalist who works for the independent media that you are talking about should be paid? How can journalists reclaim the value of their work as journalists? I want to tell you that at EFJ we have published a Declaration of Rights of Freelance Journalists in January, because it's very difficult for independent journalists to negotiate their fees, and the EU competition authorities published guidelines in 2022 allowing collective bargaining for independent freelance journalists.
Sorry to interrupt you. Your question is clear. How are we paying these people to do and stay as independent as they are? André.
Well, we have to pay well.
We have to pay them well, that's one thing, yes.
Yeah. I think we have to pay as much as we can. It's a fundamental kind of work. We don't, most of the time you don't have the financial conditions to do that, but of course you have to make an effort in that, of course.
if we are precarious,
Yeah.
then we will, if you pay them peanuts, you get monkeys. Isn't that what we say?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to end on that disappointed note, on that bombshell, as they say at Top Gear. I wanted to summarize a few things that you mentioned very briefly, because one of the things we were here about reclaiming. So it said we lost something. I don't think we've lost that much. We need to retain what we have. It's good enough journalism, but our public doesn't always find it. It's being radically independent financially, paying our reporters well, but we're not always capable of doing that. So we have to find more revenue. We have to save journalism from the media, but we need the media outlets anyway. And we have to keep distinguishing between facts and opinion and be radically transparent. Boy, you have 2 days to do this here at IPI. And these people, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you. That was fun. That was fun.